So the Prius started making a noise like it was trying to die the day before a 500-mile road trip. After doing some research online, basically looking things up on YouTube, I have found that it could be anything from a failed PCV to a faulty head gasket. I'm going to completely ignore the chance that it is a head gasket issue and fix everything else that I can. Let's get into it. First thing, there is very obviously just standing oil here.
Oh my god. Okay, that's not good.
Looks significantly better than it did yesterday. If you get inside here, you can kind of see.
Okay, I think we can say that was reasonably successful.
Welcome back to the garage. We have another exciting video, this time with the Prius. Really wasn't planning on filming this. It was a very random problem that came up. After looking into it a little bit, found out it's very common and there's not a lot of good information out there about what has actually worked for people. So what happened was, about 2-3 weeks ago, we were driving the car around, and on initial startup, and then occasionally after that, when the engine, like the gas engine, would kick in, it would knock, misfire, just shake like crazy, like it was gonna fall out of the car, throw a rod through the block or something. But other times it ran just fine. So it was not clear at all what the problem was. One day I started throwing some engine codes, and it just gave me some misfires, which could be literally anything. So I just ignored it for a while. We probably put 600-700 miles on the car in about a month. And then I decided to actually dive in and see what was going on. And so you'll see here, we pulled off the intake, the throttle body, and the EGR system. And I think that is it. Cleaned everything up, and it was a real pain in the ass. Stay tuned and check it out.
Ready? Check out that clamp. It hooks into itself so it stays open automatically. Maybe I don't work on enough Japanese cars to know that that's not unique, but that's pretty cool. Ooh, wow. Throttle body is filled with oil. Put some masking tape on everything so you don't forget to put it back together. right, here is the throttle body off. Here it is laying right here. And you can see, first thing, there's very obviously just standing oil here down in the throttle body. Look at that. There's a little bit of coolant in there, but that's just from me popping off a coolant line. So that's pretty crazy. Got to be part of the problem. All right, we have the intake off. You can see the large hole here. This is our PCV. We have various coolant lines and all this kind of junk running through here. But if I get this shown in here just right, you should be able to see just how nasty all these ports are. And reason being, here we are. That's just one side of the intake manifold. Bear with me a moment here. Flip this thing over. You can see here, just caked inside there with oil. So it's going to be a lot of cleaning.
Okay, we have this gnarly old intake manifold off of the Prius. That was a real pain. So I'll get to that in a moment. I'll show you what this thing looks like. So here's the very plastic intake manifold. Just mounts on the front of the engine. It only mounts with 5 locations. I believe it was 3 bolts and 2 nuts on studs. You can see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Aside from that, there is no additional mounting, but there are a few things that hold it in place in case you get stuck on there. So those are all 1/2 inch or 13 millimeter for the main mounting. Everything else that you kind of have to take off, the other accessories here, like the throttle body itself, everything else is a 10 mil, if I remember correctly. So you have those, and then you have this, which is part of the EGR system. It's a hard metal pipe, hard mounted on the sides. So if you get these broken loose, do not pry this off, because this is not a flexible piece here at all. So that comes off pretty easily. There are a lot of little hoses and connectors and things all over the place. The throttle body itself has a coolant circulation going through it, so I just clipped it off with 2 small vice grips to hold that in place for the time being. But I'll show a couple clips of this. There is just a significant amount of oil in this thing. It is so caked up, which I'm fairly certain is the main issue here. I believe it is a result of this old PCV. You can shake it and kind of hear things moving around in there. And I'll compare it to this new one. I went over to O'Reilly quick. Bought this thing, it was like $10. It's just a generic, I think it just says import PCV. So I think it's used on all kinds of stuff. But I got the old sealant and everything. It just falling off there. This one, it's just, I think this has gotten way too dirty. And I'll show you this here. There we go. You can just see how gnarly that is. So inside there, I believe this thing has just been so caked up that it's just kind of starting to fail. You can tell just moving a little bit, it's gummy. So there's baked oil and all kinds of junk in there. I'm sure it needs to be replaced, and I'm fairly certain that's a significant part of why this thing is sucking so much oil in. Down in the bottom here, below where the throttle body sits, that's the low point in the intake manifold, and there was a puddle probably an 1/8 inch deep of oil in there. Really surprised by that. I mean, you don't expect a newer little import car to have these problems. It doesn't ever burn oil noticeably, and there's no oil leaking from anywhere. So that's I started to think like, what is going on with this thing? And here's the intake manifold gasket. It actually feels great, but got this thing just down at O'Reilly. Also, it's a kit from Felpro, rubber gasket. There's the number right there, MS 97144. It has the intake to head gasket, and then it also has a throttle body to intake gasket, which goes right there. It's a little concerning that the new one has that little metal shield there, and the old one does not. Huh. Weird. Okay. So that is it. I'm going to clean this thing up. I bought 4 cans of brake cleaner and carbon choke cleaner, and I'm just going to blast this thing and get it all cleaned up. So, see you soon.
All right, we're going to begin the reassembly process. First thing to go on is our new PCB. All right, so PCB, 7/8 inch socket. Two little ears on it, so it can only be in here a certain way. I bought a new one of these, but it's not here yet, so we're just gonna have to deal for now. Actually cleaned. This thing was gnarly. It was full of dirt. So we have a new gasket in here. All right, update on the Prius. I think it was Monday or Tuesday this week. I started digging in, took off the intake, the throttle body, all the hoses, all that junk, cleaned everything up, got that back on. You saw it in the video of the first startup. It ran like trash. Let it run for a little bit, warm up. Went through a couple cycles of that, let it sit overnight, and then started up the next morning. No death rattle on the first drive. And then I drove it around probably 150 miles so far over the course of a few days. Today's Saturday, and it has gone away almost entirely. I'll get a little stumble on like the second startup, like so if I go somewhere and then come back into the car 10 minutes later and come back home, a little slight stumble there. But what I want to do today, we're getting in and we are going to take off the EGR system and clean that out, because I saw there's just a ton of soot in there, and that can also be a significant contributing factor to this. I also saw when I opened up the hood that I forgot to reattach one of the EGR tubes, like actually bolt it down, so maybe that's giving me part of the problem. So I'm going to dive in there right now. Got to take off the cowl and all that stuff like I would if I was doing spark plugs, so we'll see how fast I can do that and if I remember how to do it. Well, let's go. All right, we're getting into this. We're gonna start taking off the cowl and then just tear this thing apart like I mentioned in the previous video to get the EGR system out of there. So let's get moving. The first step, we gotta take off the windshield wipers. And in doing that, we wanna mark the current position on the windshield. There are a bunch of small plastic clips along here that we gotta get out. The very end has these little guys. These little plastic screw clips that hold both tips. Lift out. Okay. That took about 15 minutes. But now, we have full access to the top of the engine. The majority of these bolts up here are 10 millimeter. EGR clip. Those bolts are already off because I forgot to put them back on. I try to put bolts back where they go to save the spot, because it's so easy to forget where things go. This big one looks an awful lot like a 13. Interesting. So that's a 12. That means the other one was probably 12 also. So I knew there was coolant running through here somewhere, just didn't know where. These lines back here are coolant lines running through the EGR cooler. Gonna try not to take that off if possible. Oh my god. Okay, that's not good. 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 Alright, I just took the studs out of the back of the EGR pipe so that it might come away from this thing. There we go. We are free. Get out of here. My God. Okay. There it is. We are out. Right, here we are with the whole EGR assembly off. Took forever, but we're here now. Let's get this thing disassembled. Get a better look inside. As you can see, there's still some antifreeze leaking out. Ooh, wow. Look at that. That is black. There. There are two nuts. Jeez, this thing is just caked shut. Okay, okay. This is good. This tells me that maybe we're getting somewhere here. Wow. Yeah, this thing is gnarly. This side is like the solenoid and electrical connector in there. Wow. Alright, I'm going to clean this up and we'll come back. Alright, it is day 2 of cleaning the EGR system on the Prius, and things really got out of hand yesterday. So here is where we are now. Here's the chaotic tool bench. Gone through, I had 4 cans of this and a can of brake and carb cleaner. This is my last can, so I've gone through a ton of that. This thing, the main cooler unit for the EGR, looks significantly better than it did yesterday. If you get inside here, you can kind of see it's actually a bit clean now. That is the intake side. This is the exhaust side. You can't quite tell. Let's get a good angle here. And it's a little better. A ton of sludge came out of there. So what I had to do, I would fill it up with brake cleaner, blast it out, and then what I found online was that another gentleman had a similar problem with this exact same car, same EGR, and he used oven cleaner. This crap, just the yellow Easy Off that you can get from the grocery store. And so all of this here and this disgusting bucket of sludge is the result of me repeatedly spraying that in there, letting it sit, sloshing it around, dumping it out, spraying it out, and then I also brake cleaned it to dry it out. Got a huge amount of stuff out of it, and you can see here just a little bit that I did on the bench in the cap before I even really went over and went crazy with it. So, if nothing else, it's significantly better. I have one chemical burn on my leg here. Didn't realize while I was spraying it, a little splotch got on me. I'm kind of amazed didn't get on the rest of me. But we're going to start putting this thing back together because it's Sunday afternoon and this car has to work this week. So let's get into it and see how the hell it goes. All right, we are going to start by just piecing the EGR back together. Get my handy-dandy gloves on. Working with some nasty chemicals yesterday, and that oven cleaner can really eat away at skin, which I found out, which is not something anybody wants to discover. All right, so close. Here we go. Okay, EGR system, cooler, fancy, clean. I don't know why that just moved. That's a little disconcerting. You can see this thing's very nice and clean inside there now. Always take pictures, because inevitably you will forget how things go back together. Alright, we stole a bolt from something else. Okay, that is the EGR mostly back together. Let's move on. Alright, we're going to start putting the EGR back in. Let's see how challenging this is. Didn't see from yesterday's video, this is an extremely snug fit. And by yesterday's video, I just mean the earlier part of this video. Okay, we're back with a reduced section of the EGR. Oh, that's a lot easier. Okay. So when you're putting this back in, take off the front pipe that comes off of the actual diaphragm. Otherwise, you'll never get it back in place. There's a stud way down here. Got that one. A lot of tubes and crap that are just in the way here. Okay, that general orientation seems appropriate. Good. We're in the final stretch. I'm gonna put the air box back on. Here we have our specialty pink Toyota coolant. In my antics over here, I lost a significant amount of fluid, so I gotta fill this thing back up. Got the whole air box, EGR system, everything I think buttoned up and back in place. Obviously the cowl's not on yet, but before we put that on, we're gonna start this and see what happens. Gotta tighten that down. Okay, I think we can say that was reasonably successful. Now while we're under here, I think we'd be remiss if we didn't check the spark plugs. Bought this 14mm deep socket, spark plug socket, the last time I did this, because these are so deep. You can see how far in that way. It goes up to there. So deep in there, I didn't want to drop a spark plug down in there and damage it. I just did these maybe 15,000 miles ago, so it should be fine. Honestly, if one of them's fine, I'm not going to check all of them. It's a little oily. But the tip is great. You know what? Now that I'm thinking about it, I don't have anything with me to change them. So, that's just, it is what it is. Now, we're going to put the whole cowl back on. Alright, we're getting ready to put the whole cowl, wipers, everything back on the Prius. Before I do that though, I wanted to show everybody what this looks like. If you ever do a spark plug service, you got to do all of this. Take out, it's all the wiper assembly, the big plastic shroud, metal piece that sits in here. So the engine is very, very open after you do this. Something else that I forgot about completely, and I'll show you here. I've been working on this car, and it's just been sitting out of my driveway because it's typically beautiful here. Last night though, it was raining, and I completely forgot that this massive gap is here, so my engine got rained on overnight. Doesn't appear to have had any real issues. I started it, it ran, but Just remember that. If you're ever doing this work, don't forget that there's a very large gap between the hood and the windshield if the cowl and wiper assembly is gone. Alright, we're going to get to putting this thing back in. Alright, we're going to put the cowl back on and windshield wipers. It is currently 3 o'clock. It's been exactly 24 hours since I stopped working on this yesterday. And we'll see if this takes any time at all. Alright, we got 2 bolts here, bolts across the back, various mounting points for the rubber motor mounts, but should go back in pretty easily. Here is the wiper arm assembly. Almost lost all my bolts. Here's the actual cowl piece. Fairly seated. You can see these are the clips that go along here. So just gotta make sure they are lined up. It should just clip right in place. Long. That's back there. Okay, so now that's in place. There is this thing. How does this work? So the edges of the cowl here actually pop out so that you can, in fact, remove this piece. And I think they just pop back in. Yep, there we go, that's in. Alright, now we attach the wiper blades. Let's see if they work. Put this little clip back on here. Alright, we are at least all back together. I don't want to say necessarily done, but here it is. The whole engine bay, everything is complete. It's got the whole cowl back on there, wipers are on, airbox, everything is good to go. I do have one little bolt left, but I'm not overly concerned. That's just a body bolt. And actually, now that I'm thinking about it, I think I might know where that goes. But we're going to clean all this up, take the car for a drive, make sure it doesn't explode.
After all that cleaning and everything, it was very evident that there was a large amount of oil that was circulating through the intake system. The car does burn, or use at least, about 1.5 quarts every 4,000 to 5,000 miles. And after looking through that intake, it's very evident that that's where some of the oil at least is going. I have never noticed any blue smoke coming out the back. It doesn't smell like it's burning oil, and it's not leaking any oil. So I'm assuming that it's being sucked through the intake, through the PCV system. And after switching out that gummy old valve for the shiny new one, hopefully we'll see a difference. If I remember, I'll give an update on the car at the next oil change, assuming the engine hasn't blown up by that point. So, as you can tell by the state of me, I am dirty, bleeding. I actually have a chemical burn on my leg from using that oven cleaner. Um, I'm beat. I did not want to or expect to have to do that to that car. It's never really given us any problems. But now it appears to be working okay. I hope the information in there was helpful to anybody that may be watching this. I know it can be very frustrating trying to find things on the internet when there's a specific problem with your car and everybody says that they have a solution. I think so far that it is fixed, and I'll post another video if it rears its head again, and maybe that video will include me just burning the car in an open field somewhere. So, thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed it. Stay tuned for the next one.